Alright all, and welcome back to a new video and another preview video, but a bit of a Brucey bonus of a weekday preview, focusing in on the card for the Lawlors and Naas Novice Hurdle Day at Naas tomorrow. It's good weekday racing. It was obviously meant to be the Sunday card. It did get postponed to now, and hopefully it will be run tomorrow and we can go about trying to pick a few winners. I'm going to preview all 7 races on the card. As I say, just a little bit of a different one. I have been doing the daily selections over on Twitter. If you want to get daily selections from myself, do go over on Twitter. I'm managing to be keeping afloat for the last couple of months now. I've been keeping on the day by days for the last year or so in profit. Not massively in profit or anything, but in profit, which is always a good thing. We had a winner and a place over at Wetherby today. The ones at Paradis a little more difficult due to the ground. The ground's going to be testing at Naas tomorrow, so it's going to take horses that are going to get the trip well, and hopefully we've found a couple that can maybe do the job for us. There's a few shorter price horses in there. There's a few each way plays in there, so a bit for everyone. If you're a favourite backer, there will be a couple of them. If you're more of an each way value hunter, hopefully there's a few of them as well. Also, if you do enjoy this type of video, perhaps for other weekday meetings down the road, do let me know in the comments down below, because I'd be more than open to the idea of maybe doing these day videos. Not every day, but for some meetings if the demand was there. So you might let me know in the comments down below if this is something that might interest you. Starting off with the 1250 tomorrow, which is the Mayor's Beginner's Chase, and to be honest, it's probably one of the weakest races on the card, and it's not like me in terms of I don't particularly like putting up odds on shots, but this Miss Pernickity at 10 to 11, look, I think she's probably the most likely winner. I'm going to leave that up to you, whether you want to get stuck in at odds on or not. She'll be my selection for the race. As I say, I don't really like backing odds on myself, but she brings the best form in the race. She was second in the maiden hurdle last year behind Larkaboos, who's a decent mare, and was second to Sace Gold, Mick Winter's good mare, down at Thurles over 2 miles 7. She made her chasing debut over 2.5 miles at Limerick on heavy ground. In a Mayor's Beginner's Chase won by Scarlet and Dove, and Larkaboos was in second that day, and they're two pretty above average mares. I'd say Scarlet and Dove has probably got a graded race in her at some stage in this mare's programme, and Larkaboos certainly is up to winning races as she's shown before. She dumped pretty well that day all the way up until the last, where she made a bad mistake, then weakened into 4th. I think she was beating the guts of 17 lengths in the process, but Joseph O'Brien's had a double or today, it might be yesterday if you're watching this on the Wednesday, but his horses haven't actually been in great form throughout the season. I'm sure Joseph was maybe hoping for them to be a little bit more forward than they are, but they seem to be turning the corner a little bit since the new year. He's banged in a couple of winners. As I say, he had 2 nice winners today, including a winner of a Beginner's Chase off the back of a long absence. So there will be confidence in the camp. JJ Slevin rode those 2 winners as well today, so hopefully they can go and land the opener tomorrow. As I say, not one of the great contests. I can't see an angle into the race other than the favourite. Just because it's a 7-runner race, it's not really an each-way race as a result. And this Something Sweet doesn't appeal to me whatsoever. Was beaten off a mark of 102 in the Adair Manor race at Leopardstown over Christmas. Can't be having that form as up to beating a horse like Miss Pernickity, who's shown RPRs of around the mid 115s to 116s on her better runs, and that does leave her 10 or 15 pounds ahead of the rest if you can take those RPRs at face value. Moving on to the 120, which is a cracking race, this Novice Chase. And to be honest, if you stuck a grade 2, maybe even a grade 1 sign beside it, it wouldn't be out of place. Just the 4 runners, but 4 class runners at that. Nergamine, Captain Guinness, Blackbow and Farmix for Liz Doyle, who's not a bad horse. Probably will be out of his depth in this type of a race, but the horse that wins this race, it more than likely will make up into being Ireland's leading challenger for the Arkle. So really one to watch if you get the time, the 122 mile. And I'm going to take a chance here on Captain Guinness. He's a horse I really liked at the back end of last year. He obviously was running a super race in the Supreme when being brought down, unfortunately, by the fall of Elixir Dane, which was really precipitated from a steering Forlange jumping out to his right at 2 out. You never know where he was going to finish, but realistically he probably would have finished in the first 5. And the first 5 in the Supreme looked pretty smart, certainly at the time. Even when you think of Allart, who finished 5th in the race, has gone on to win a Grade 2 on his seasonal debut over fences. The only thing with Captain Guinness was that he ran an absolute stinker on his chasing debut down at Tipperary when he was beat by Unaccepted. Unaccepted hasn't been seen since. I think there's something wrong. I saw rumours on Twitter that there was something wrong with Unaccepted, so hopefully it isn't too bad. But if you guys know, please do let me know in the comments below, because he's not got any entries anywhere. It doesn't look great. A few ominous signs on the wall, but this is Captain Guinness. He returned to form last time out when winning, beating a horse called Midnight Run, who's not a bad horse for Joseph's, by 4.5 lengths. It was 20 lengths back to Jungle Junction in third, who was only around 1.5 lengths down in a beginner's chase at Leopardstown over Christmas when falling at the last. So that doesn't look too bad form, considering he was beaten 20 lengths in the process. And he does have Grade 1 ability. I'm almost sure of it, Captain Guinness. We just need to see it come out. And Nergamine is a horse that an awful lot of people like. I'm sure an awful lot of you guys like as well. I just think he's pretty short at 11 to 10, personally speaking, considering he won a 2.5 mile beginner's chase at Goran last time out. The form of that race isn't up to too much either. Port Stanley's been a bit disappointing for me over fences. I thought he'd win the last day when touched off by Front View, who was given a bit of a was given a ride like there was another day in mind as well, and still won snug on the line. So I'm not just sure about Energamine's form, and dropping down to 2 miles would more so be my issue. And obviously Black Bow fell last time out. He's a horse of a lot of ability, Black Bow. Would it surprise me if he won? No, it probably wouldn't, but I couldn't be taking him off that. So Captain Guinness, 15 to 8. I think it's a fair price. I thought he'd maybe be a little shorter, actually. I thought he'd be more 6 to 4, and Energamine 5 to 4, 6 to 4. I thought they'd almost be joint of the two. Instead, it's 11 to 10, 15 to 8, and I think there's a bit more juice in Captain Guinness's price, and hopefully he can earmark himself as potentially an each-way candidate for the Arkle. The 150 is a 2 mile handicap chase, a pretty good little race this, and I've backed this horse a couple of times this year, and I've already said him on the preview last weekend. A horse called Cappucimix, who's in here at 14 to 1, and I think it's just a massive price. He's obviously got a much shorter price stablemate in Epsom to Who, which Rachel Blackmore decides to ride, and probably rightly so, considering he won his beginners at Clonmel very impressively last time out. But again, the form of that race leaves a bit to be desired. Wolf of All Streets was back in 4th or 5th that day. He was tailed off in a Fairly House beginners today, so I'm not so sure about that. Cappucimix is dropping back in class here, and as a result he is top weight off a mark of 134, but he won over this course and distance as a novice last year when Robbie Puppy Parr rode him. He was 2 to 5 that day, jumped well, stayed on well, and won very easily in a pretty weak beginners. He's been campaigned in pretty good races. When you look at the 2 races he's running this year, he was behind Chatham Street Lad down in Cork and behind Sizing Potsy at Punchestown, I believe it was, last time out. So these are 2 very good races, and now he's right back down in a completely different stratosphere of horse here. And even though he is carrying top weight, he's an exuberant sort that does well at the track and perhaps might be a class above. I just can't have him as a 14 to 1 chance at all. I think he should be a single figure price, and I think it's a very good each way price to get stuck into. The 220 at the Lawlors and Naas Novice Hurdle, my thoughts haven't really changed. Ashdale Bob is 10 to 3 here. I'm just going to put him up at 10 to 3. I'm not going to say I have backed him anti-post at 4 to 1 each way. That bet is still live, but I'm not going to put that up because you can't get it anymore. He's 10 to 3. I think he's the most solid option in the race. The softer the ground, the better, I believe, for this horse. And yes, I think Bob Ollinger and Blue Lord potentially are very, very impressive horses, potentially much better than a horse like Ashdale Bob, but you might need to be a stout stayer in this race, and one that maybe might be running in a Bartlett if the ground comes up as heavy as I believe it might do. And Ashdale Bob, I suspect, would be going Bartlett rather than Ballymore, and he might stay on and just land a few tidy enough bets if he does so. Certainly from my perspective he will, but I think Bob Ollinger's a really good horse. There's no getting away from it. Would I be surprised if either of the front 2 in the market did beat him? Probably not, but the prices would indicate that, and I think Ashdale Bob at 10 to 3 is a fair price for a solid bet. I can't see him being out of the frame. The 250 a maiden hurdle looks to be between 3 or 4 at the top of the betting, as often these Irish maiden hurdles are, and I can't get away from the one right at the top here, Paradis at 5-4 with Paddy Power and Betfair for Gordon Elliott and Jack Kennedy. This horse did it really well in a Fairy House bumper. The race that MYLN won a couple of years ago as well. He's a big grey horse, and he pulled away readily from a Barry Connell horse called Good Land, who was well found in the market. And when Barry Connell horses are well found in the market, they're usually anticipated to run very well and potentially be a bit above average. He absolutely dispensed to him, as I say, by 5.5 lengths. He now goes hurdling. It wouldn't surprise me at all if this horse rocks up at Cheltenham in a Grade 1 novice hurdle, if I'm being brutally honest. If he goes out and does the business tomorrow by 7 or 8 lengths, he more than likely will head on to the Dublin Racing Festival to run the Deloitte, and then maybe Supreme or Ballymore Bound. I think this is a horse of an awful lot of ability. There's a few decent horses in this race, though, that he'll have to put away if he does want to be contesting in anything at Cheltenham. Captain Kangaroo has been maybe a shade disappointing this year in his 2 starts over hurdles. On Eagle's Wings brings a very robust level of bumper form to the table, including in and around the likes of Statler, who I quite like for the Bartlett. He was behind Chemical Energy in a bumper last time out. He also absolutely thrashed Cost a lot more, who's won a race or 2 over hurdles this year as well. And there's a Mouse Morris horse called Limestone Rock, who I wouldn't put anyone off having a few pennies each way on at 8-1. He looked a nice enough horse when running on well in a bumper behind Ballycairns of Gordon Elliott's. Unfortunately, the race that Reality Check came to grief at Leopardstown. But I think Paradis is the likeliest winner, 5-4. Again, it's a short price. But I do think he will win, and I think he is potentially one that might slip under the radar going forward. I think you obviously have to remember Asterion Forlange won this maiden hurdle last year before rocking up as favourite for the Supreme. I'm not saying the same will happen with this Paradis, but he might scale a fairly high rank by the end of this year, whether it's at Cheltenham, Fairy House, Punchestown, anything like that. The 320 is a very trappy Dare Manor opportunity handicap hurdle for horses rated 80-116. Won last year by Abraham of Martin Brazel's. Conor Brazel came there with a fistful of reins. Won on the snaff at 16-1. It's a race that can often provide those types of winners. And I'd take one at an each way price in this horse called Castle Townhouse at 8-1. You're basing it off one piece of form with this horse, which was last time out at Limerick. Trained by Michael McDonough. Barry Brown back in the saddle. Barry Brown had a bad injury earlier in the season. He's now back in the saddle. Off a mark of 95. I think it's a fair mark. He was third in a point-to-point, which was not bad form before running 2 pretty nondescript races in maiden hurdles behind Joseph Conrad and Percy Warner, both trained by Gordon Elliott. One was at Cork, one was at Navan. But then he was second at Limerick last time out to Ciel de Neige at a massive price of 80-1. Now, Ciel de Neige did win head and chest, but he only won by 2 lengths. And Ciel de Neige is the type of horse that would absolutely hack up in a race like this. He's been given a mark of 95, which, as I say, I think is very fair. Steps up to 2.5 miles, or 2 mile 3, should I say, for the first time under rules. And considering he was third in a 3 mile point-to-point, you'd like to hope there's a bit of juice to come with this horse stepping up in trip. I think he's feasibly treated, and I think 8-1's not the worst each-way price in a 4-place race with the majority of bookmakers. And the final race, the 350, the 4-year-old bumper, a really hard race because these horses obviously none of them have run before. It's the first 4-year-old bumper of the year, usually won by a decent horse. The Devil's Coachman won it last year, beating Shakespeare's Word. And there was also a decent horse of Gordon Elliott's in behind that won the time after that back in third. It was a decent enough race. Obviously, the Devil's Coachman has developed into a pretty good novice hurdler for Noel Meade this year. I'll take a chance on one for one of my favourite trainers in this, Regal Statesman at 15-2 each way. There's 3 places up for grabs here, so hopefully he may be able to hit the frame. He's very well bred. He's a walk in the park gelding, obviously walk in the park, the sire of the mighty Duvan, Min, and other very good horses to note. And he is attractively bred. And most of all, I'm just quite intrigued by the owner combination. It's as Mrs. Paul Shannon and Mrs. John Magnier teaming together. They don't team together that often. In the last 5 years in Ireland, they've teamed together and only had 2 or 3 horses. But those 2 or 3 horses have been very good. They had riders on the Storm, who ended up achieving RPRs of mid-140s when trained by Tom Taff, and Roll Again for Willie Mullins, that was around a 130s horse. over novice hurdles, and he did run a few times over fences. So they haven't had many runners together, and it's just very interesting that they have a runner here with Paul Nolan. He's obviously ready to go, ready to rock and roll if they're going to run him in the first 4-year-old bumper of the year. It is like what, you know, backing a horse in the first 2-year-old maiden of the season at Naas in March. You know, there's a very attractively bred horses. There's a horse for Gordon Elliott in there. There's a horse for Willie Mullins in there. A mare that's getting a lot of allowances because of Jodie Townend as well riding. It is a hard one. It is a bit, you know, needle in a haystack. I just thought it was interesting. A well-bred horse, not the most common of owners, together, and also have had a few nice horses when they have come together. Having a horse with Paul Nolan, I really hope this horse can run well for Paul. His horses did take a turn around Christmas time, and they are beginning to run a bit better, which is brilliant. It's fantastic for him, and hopefully he might have a decent enough bumper horse on his hands here in Regal Statesman. Anyway, I hope you guys did enjoy this video, and if you did, please do give it a like and subscribe to the channel down below. We're very nearly at 2,300 subscribers, which is a great feat. And obviously, as I said earlier in the video, do let me know if you enjoy these day-by-day videos and you'd like to see maybe a few more of them. Maybe I nominate one day per week that I'd cover just as an added video for you guys to enjoy. You might let me know if you're interested in that or not, and obviously let me know your selections for Naas down below, and of course follow me on Twitter if you want to see whether there's any other selections I might put up across the pond for tomorrow or the next couple of days. There's obviously some good racing on this weekend, and until probably Thursday time, where I'll start covering the weekend action, looking at the good races at Warwick, the Dam Moor at Fairyhouse, and obviously that very good novice chase at Punchestown on Sunday, which has seen entries such as Envoy Lena, Steering for Lange and Andy Dufresne. Please keep safe, keep well, hopefully land a few bets tomorrow, and I'll see you guys soon. Cheers.